Hi everybody, it's Violent Kitty. I think that since Christ ascended to heaven, that Christians have been debating grace versus the law. And I don't think it's a matter of grace versus the law. I think that there must be, as in basically everything, moderation and balance, in all things being moderate. You see, I have a friend that explains it very succinctly, and I like how she says it. Grace and legalism need to walk hand in hand. You see, the law defines sin. Without it, how can we recognize our own need of a Savior? And grace deals with the sin. First, in order to truly understand what Christ had to say about the law, we need to understand who Christ truly was and is today. And we find that definition in John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and through Him all things were made, and without Him nothing was made that was made. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Christ was and is God. His divinity is very clearly defined in this passage. And that is why, when in John 14 He said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me, and he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. But that the world may know that I love the Father, and that the Father gave me commandment, so I do. See, because He is God, that means that He was with God in the beginning, and He was present at the very penning of the fullness of the law. In fact, in Matthew 5, He said, "Do not think I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Who therefore breaks the least of one of these commandments and teaches men to do so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever does and teaches them, he shall be great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." You see, here we see very clearly that Christ was defining our need to adhere to the law. He says very clearly, "Whoever breaks the least of one of these commandments and teaches men to do so shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." And so, as I see it, we are under grace because that person who breaks the law can still be in the kingdom of heaven, but will be called least. But whoever does and teaches the law shall be called great. So if you keep the commands and you teach others to do so, you will be viewed as great in the kingdom of heaven. And I believe, and there's very good scriptural reference for this, that those who live righteously will receive more blessings here on earth and greater reward in the heavenly kingdom. And those who break the law while under grace will receive fewer blessings and fewer rewards in the heavenly kingdom. If you love me, keep my commandments. Obey. Christ demands our obedience. And it is how we show our love for Him. If you love me, obey. Now, I do believe it is very good to learn the law. And I know that the law does not save you. I also believe that we are called to learn the law so we can understand the depths of our sin and our need of a Savior. Unfortunately, some people learn the law not so they can apply it to themselves, but so they can point the finger at others. In John 8, we see one such example. Now early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery, and when they sat her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that she should be stoned. What do you say?" They said this, testing him, that they might have something with which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Christ did not condemn her as under the law as they were demanding. Now I want to point out a couple very clear things going on here. Things that have always bothered me. The law demands, and Christ knew the law, that when they were caught in the act of adultery, both parties needed to be brought. They were trying to lay a trap for Christ, and he knew this. They tried to lay a trap, but Christ was and is God, and you can't pull one over on God. So, where was the guy? Now I'm convinced that this woman truly received salvation. And so when I get to heaven, I'm going to go find her, and I'm going to ask her. The guy, it was one of the Pharisees, wasn't it? It's obvious to me that they were trying to protect one of their own. Another thing that just strikes me is their absolute bloodlust. They said, "Moses commanded that we stone her." And you could just see that they were ready to do it, to kill her mercilessly. They knew the law. They knew the letter of the law. But Christ said, "Do you understand the spirit of the law?" And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and it's not an original thought. The only other time in the entire scriptures we see something written with the finger of God was when the first commandments were written by his very finger. And perhaps he was writing, "Thou shalt not kill. Love the Lord thy God. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Do not lie. Do not commit adultery. Do not covet." And seeing what he was written, those men realized that they were guilty. We are called to obey the law. Not one jot or tittle will pass away until all these things And that's all I have to say. BK out.